International Relations Minister Maite Nkoana-Mashabane says the current tension in the Korean Peninsula, where the US and North Korea are threatening to take action, is as a result of the failure of a multilateral body like the United Nations Security Council to transform. Nkoana-Mashabane was speaking on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum on Africa in Durban. Our foreign editor Sophie Mokoena spoke to the minister about the importance of peace and security in creating a conducive climate for investment on the continent and globally.
It is critical, particularly at this juncture, particularly in year 2017, because we are a young democracy. Remember, we've just celebrated our 23rd anniversary a few days ago. So that which is a maturing democracy, it's what South Africans themselves are still battling with. But because we have been suffering from a colonization of a special type, when other African countries got decolonized, they didn't have to deal with what we're dealing with. We still are talking about, and I'm very happy that WEF has chosen this inclusive growth as a theme, because you cannot talk about freedom, democracy, but you do not say where do the people live, what do they eat, how do they contribute to the well-being or the economic well-being of their country. That's what we are dealing with in South Africa, in the continent of Africa, but broadly in line with our foreign policy of a peaceful and a developmental South Africa, SADC, the continent of Africa and the world. The global community is going through a real geopolitical tectonic shift that is both political and economic. Remember when the World Bank and IMFs were formed, really the Bretton Woods institutions were not formed for developed countries, but we find ourselves in the space where even the countries that thought they were developed, they need to be financially rescued today. So this is not what this is not what Africans thought Uhuru was going to be about, that we are going to have to fold up our sleeves and become our own liberators. So that which is happening is our people yearning for true democracy, that they participate fully in the livelihoods and in what's going on in their country, in their neighborhood, in their continent.
Minister, you spoke about peace and security. Stability is key to ensure, to create that environment for business to flourish. We still have pockets of conflict. Let's take SADC for an example. You have DRC, Lesotho is going through some challenges. How do you ensure that there's peace and stability? Because if you don't achieve peace and stability, this is a challenge.
Peace and stability has unfortunately become a global challenge, because what is happening in Syria and Yemen and everywhere else does affect the global community. Now, globalization has come with lots of very positives. What has not changed in the 70 years is that there has been no reforms in the premier institution called the Security Council of the UN. Now, you now have a P2 and a P3, so there's just no way that we will not be affected. Remember that on the table at a given time of the United Nations Security Council, more than 60-70% of the issues will be about us, without us. So that which is happening in other parts of the continent, the DRC, had it not been for the contribution that South Africa, Malawi, Tanzania through SADC are making, maybe we would have had even a much more serious situation. We are still hoping that they will find themselves together, and we will support them as they strive for peace, security, democracy, and development.
Earlier on, I spoke.
Lesotho. You spoke about Lesotho earlier on. You know, I was saying to one of your colleagues earlier on, as we are sitting here, in the UK, they have snap elections on the 8th of next month. There is an electioneering process going on in France, because they're developed countries. It's like, it's okay, it can happen.
Soon it will be Germany.
Very much so. But when it happens in our neighborhood, because people are hungry, we really cannot afford to keep using the scarce resources for this festival of democracy. It's necessary. It's very necessary, but it's not cheap. Because if it doesn't happen, then people take up arms. If they take up arms, then you even go into deeper alleys. But we hope that the people of Lesotho will finally find some way also to focus on issues of development post this forthcoming elections.
South Sudan, another thorny issue. Some people are saying when you talk about the current so-called drought in that region, it's not the drought, but it's all man-made problems.
It's a combination. Southern Sudan had these challenges from 1956. 1956. At that time, it was not a focus because oil had not been discovered. People of South Sudan have been suffering that long. Of course, that which is going on now is a combination of bad elements. That is, of a nation, a very young nation, very, very young, still trying to find its foot on the ground. And of course, there's also drought. So it's a combination of the wrong elements, one being weather, we call it climate change, the other being a nascent stage still trying to find its feet on the ground. We need to be patient with them. We need to work with them so that we do not behave like they come from somewhere and that we can close one eye and we wake up one morning and they do not have a challenge. They do have a challenge of food shortage. They do have challenges of a young country that is not even 5 years old. So we need to work with them through IGAT, through the African Union and all the well-wishers in the continent and globally.
The Middle East, a thorny issue, Syria. What is South Africa's position on the Syrian question?
We have been saying and will continue to say there is no military solution to the Syrian political challenges and crisis. I felt a bit relieved this morning when I heard or saw on television that President Putin and President Trump are having talks. By the way, I'm talking about members of the Permanent Five. So if they themselves at the Security Council level assist us in finding a solution so that we put the Syrian people first and then look at the interest of members of the Security Council second, you will see we will have a peaceful world. But for us, as a developing nation, we say the solution is in the reform of the UN and its institutions, and in particular, the UN Security Council.
Minister, finally, North Korea, US and North Korea, another problem.
North Korea has been a problem, or the Korean Peninsula. Again, you cannot divorce the politics of the P5 and what has happened historically in the Korean Peninsula. So it takes us back to actually what are we talking about. So be it in the Korean Peninsula, be it in Syria, be it in Yemen, Can we please, as we talk democracy, also reform the premier institutions that governs this global community? Can institutions of global governance also be reformed? Then you will see we will stop talking in parables like we do now, because ordinary people continue to suffer.